Welcome back. We are still on the Android user authentication with profile image upload to the Mysql database. This is the second part. The first part we talked about the backend integration where we get to use the Slim PHP framework to get the API up and rolling so it could listen to a picture file and also listen to the metadata like the username, name and password, and also the file name. Now in Android Studio we'll be creating the UI interface that will interact with this API where we get to post a particular picture selected from gallery or taken from camera, and we're going to lock in the username password just like a normal user registration. From there you're going to upload those contents to the server using retrofit. Looking at dependencies closely in the app.gradle file, you need to include some implementation. The card view, retrofit from Square Up 2.3.0, retrofit 2, which is the converted JSON that converts the JSON to an object in Java. You could also include the OK HTTP3 login interceptor where you get to speed out what you're doing with the API right there in the console or in the lockout. We'll be needing the material dialog score, which will enable us to select a particular flow. Probably we need to select from gallery, or we need to select or take picture from the camera. We'll be needing glide to display the selected image, and we'll also be needing this circle image view, which will give us a circle-like sphere-like image view, and we'll be doing that right now, so don't go anywhere. From here, let's get to look at the layout of this integration. Let's do the layout activity main.xml. From here we'll get to look at how the flow is. The nested scroll view, which houses a linear layout compact. In there we have the circle image view from the library we talked about, and followed is the text input layout, where we get to have the edit text for the username, for the password, and for the name. So you have that right there, and you have a button that triggers the login button, the register. Let's get to look at the view. I'm trying to bring up the view. Cool. We have the view right there, so you could see it that visibly. This is the circle image view from the library, and we have the input fields, the name, username, password, confirm password with the button that triggers the registration. So cool. From here we'll get to understand what we're trying to look at. Let's look at the classes. We only have one class. Oh wow, we have multiple classes. Now we're going to look at the helper package, the model, which serves as the plain object in Java, where you get to mock or to map the JSON to the object. So we get to look at that in the model. In the networking, that's where we have the API's interaction with retrofit. We get to look at that in details. We'll start from that anyway, where we have two sub packages, API and generators, and you have the routes. In the routes, that's where you have the pointer to the endpoint, which is create user right there. And in the utils, we have a constant file. This constant file will point you down to all constant values, where you get to use them. They're in caps, if you notice. The identifiers are in caps, and we are going to be using basically the user base URL. That's the base URL, which points down to https unitypuzzlegame.com /demo / and the / will definitely join up with the routes, which is the create user So how are we going to bind that together? We get to do that in the API service. But before we go there, let's get to look at the data service generator. This is where you get to declare the JSON to enable complex map key serialization, serialize nulls, set dates, do some tweak to your JSON builder, and you get to have the retrofit over here. This is where you have the converter factory, which is the JSON converter factory. You could also add an interceptor when you're trying to use an API key. This is where you declare that to intercept in the header of every call you make to the API. The OK HTTP log timeout, this is very cool. When you're trying to make a REST call, or you're trying to interact with the API from retrofit, is quite cool to set up timeouts, read timeouts, connect timeouts, write timeouts, so that your application won't just be calling endlessly to the API if there's probably some failure whatsoever during the call. So you set that as 90 seconds, and you could also log to the console or to the Android monitor or to the lockout if you want to really see what's happening behind the scene when the post is being done, when the get is being done, when the fetch is done, the response you're getting back, and so on. So you could actually get that logged to the console, and you build up retrofits and make that usable. Let's get to look at the service. I want you to look at this very closely. We're able to construct the flow. Now we're expecting a message class, which is the model of this core, which is right there in the generic core. You create the user, and that's some annotation up there, which I want you to get familiar with. We have at multi-paths. If you notice, we actually set the multi-path when we are trying to upload using the advanced REST clients to the server. We set the upload file path to multi-path, which is very important. That's why you could see the annotation right there visibly. And we are posting, because we are also posting some string values like the name, the username, and password. That's why you have that right there. And what's the route? That's where we could add up the route to the base URL. You see that create user. So we're going to have / create user. And let's see how we're going to do the path map. There's a notation called path map that takes a map, which is the string request body, key value, string request body. The key is the string, while the value is the request body, which has a path map object. We also have the multi-path body, that's the file itself. That's the image selected, the video selected. It depends on the recording selected, the movie selected. So we are, in this case, it's the picture selected. The file object, you can see that the file. So now that's the two integration we are doing. We are sending the key value of string values, name, username, password in a map, and we're also sending a file called the multi-path body part. So if you're sending multiple file, you could also do it this flow. We'll get to look at that later on in the course of the video or in the course of the tutorial, where we're going to be sending multiple images, multiple videos at a time as a stream. So cool. So if you could see how this is being formulated, now we're going to send the appropriate parameters to this particular method to consume. Let's get to look at other implementation. I'll be looking at coming, trying to drag this out. The model, which is the message, it's expecting two values, an error, and the message itself. The first is in Boolean, while the second is in string data type. I think that is understandable. The helper class, where we get to have the validation to our form, is going to validate if that's an empty field. It's going to actually send an empty message. It's going to also validate if the edit text matches uh, the password. If it matches each other, it's actually going to send a message as well. So we have the validation up and running. From here, let's get to look at the main activity where everything is being tied together. We'll set this some fields over here for the text layout, for the name password, confirm password, username, and its edit text. For the buttons that will trigger the send, and we have for the validation the progress dialog, the circle image view, and we set up some static integer for the request to take photo or to select from gallery 0 and 2, which is unique. And we have the camera pic request, also an integer we're giving that. We also set up a stack definer media type, file URL, media path string, image file location, and the post path. We will be using all these fields rather than the course of the application, because in this implementation we're going to be supporting Android version 21 and above, and Android version 21 and below. So we're going to actually make the selection to gallery, and particularly when you're taking picture from camera directly, it's kind of different when you're doing that on KitKat, on Jelly Bean, and the flow is also different when you're doing that on Marshmallow, Nougat, and Oreo. So it's a different flow entirely. So we'll be separating those constraints right here. We have some initialization, the initialized views, where you get to find the ID. We'll be getting to be using our button knife to clean up things later on in the course of the tutorial, but this is just the basic flow, the plain Java to do this. The initialized listener, where it's set on click listener to make those buttons work, the register and the link. And also the profile image, because you're going to click on the profile image, which is the circle image view, to select from camera or you select from gallery. We have the permission. You need to check for some permissions: the right to read external storage, and also to write and to use the camera. Read and write external storage, and the permission to use the camera. So the system is going to check for that at first launch. If you have the permission granted, this is basically for Android version 21 and above, where you get to set up permission at runtime. I think it's from Marshmallow, rather from Marshmallow. You need to set up permission from runtime, unlike other flow of APIs where you need to just set up the permission in the manifest. But here you need to actually set it up at runtime. That's why we're having right there the initialized listeners to trigger. So at request, what is going to happen is going to send a permission result if the request code is granted or not. So at a point, if it's not granted, if you don't have a request, you should set the profile image view as not enabled, so you won't be able to click it. It's not going to be clickable. It's going to force you to take the action. It's not going to go further from there, because you actually need an image to complete your registration. So, and you also need to accept the permission. So we are tying that together, because one instruction leads to another one. So if it's been completed, it's going to enable the profile image for click. We have the validation initialized as well, and now we're going to implement the click listeners to the button to register and to the profile image. We've actually implemented the view on click listener over here, so that's why we have the on click method overridden. Cool. For the button register, it's going to trigger verified data. We'll get to look at that method later on. But for the profile image, when you click on that, you need to instantiate the material dialog, where you set the image, you set the array of the upload images. That's where you get to have the items you're trying to select. Select from gallery, take picture from camera, or you cancel the particular image. and you have its IDs attached to that items. Now you're going to have an item callback where you used to share the material dialog list callback. You have to override the on selection method where you're going to know which array, which index of the array you selected is the first index, 0 is the 1 and 2. The first index is when you're picking from the gallery. So for the second case, which is case 1, when you're trying to take the picture from the camera, you trigger the capture image. We'll get to look at the content of this method. The last one is when you're trying to cancel. You could set a different image, or basically just set the URL. You also need to set the URL to be null at this point in time, since it's actually canceling this stuff. So which is going to be post part over here when we're trying to submit. Let's get to look at that. We're trying to submit the details here. We test for null somewhere. Okay. All right. Okay. We'll get to look at that later on. But let's just continue with the implementation. It's kind of lengthy, but I want you to look at it closely so as to understand the flow. It's not something it's too easy to achieve. You need to follow the process, the steps to get that done, or else you're going to be having problems. So keep a tag on there. Now the capture image is what we're looking at right now. You're going to launch the camera app to capture the image. We're going to test if the version SDK integer is greater than 21, which is lollipop. If it's greater than 21, we know that okay, we're going to take this flow. You call the intent camera action, you call the media store action image capture. But yeah, we give some instruction to the intent to save the image, which is the photo file itself. Now you're going to do a try and catch block. If the create image file will be successful, the photo will have the address of the file, which you have right there. We'll be calling the create image file here. Let's get to look at the catch. Here we're going to call the function that will try to catch the exception made by the true function, which is the catch block over here to get the exception. Now let's get to look at the create image file. In the create image file, what it's going to do, it's a file method that throws an IO exception where you get to generate the image method started. Here we're going to create a non-collision file name. Alternatively, you set it to a unique file name using the timestamp functionality. That's where we have to call the simple date format. We have the image file name, you concatenate just not to give the same image name. That's just what that is doing. And now you have to specify the environment location and the exact path where we want the save to go, where you're saving it to. That's why we have to call the environment the directory pictures, where you concatenate plus photo saving app. That's the directory you're saving that. Then we'll create the storage directory if it does not exist. So you have to test if the storage directory exists, and if not, it's going to make a directory. You can say that called the storage directory. After that, you're going to create the file using the prefix or a suffix and the directory. You instantiate the file with an object called image here, and what it's going to do, you pass in the storage directory and the name of the file. That's the image file name. Concatenate with the MIME type, probably .png or .jpeg, depends on how the format you're giving that. And after that, the location is saved into the string image file location. You see, so you have it, the file location. You call the absolute path of the image, which is the file itself, and you could also pass, if you are using file URL, just pass the path, which is now a string value. You pass, you convert it back to the URL. That's why you could have a usable file location string or a file URL. Cool. Now you're going to return the image, which is the file. Also, the file is returned to the previous intent across the camera application. Let's get to look at the calling. The calling is the create image file. It returns the file itself to the photo file right there. Now you're going to do something further. If you're targeting Android, Lollipop, and above, we need to add an extra file to the intent to put the address onto it. For the purpose, you need to use the file provider declared. You have to do that rather than the manifest. There's some step you need to achieve in doing this. It's a different flow entirely. Let's get to look at that. You're going to be creating XML in the REST package. Call that provider path, where you need to set up the external path to the external files with the path dot. You have that right there. Not only that, you also need to lock in some things in the manifest. Over here, you could say this provider. You set up the name, the Android support version 4 content file provider, the authorities, exported false or true. You grant UI permissions with the metadata, so it's going to be compatible. You point out the file provider paths and the XML you created, which is the provider paths. Cool. With this, it's solid. You set it up, so it's actually going to save the camera selected picture to a content provider. You get that, which is going to be temporarily because you want to use it. So that's just the flow. It's actually changed. Previously, you will see the previous flow, but this is the recommended flow right from now when you're trying to target Marshmallow, Nougat, Oreo, and above. So you have that set up. So cool. You have the output URL here. You call the file provider to get the URL for file, the context, the authority, which is the config, the application ID, concatenate with the provider. You have the photo file, which is the file itself. Now you're saving to the content provider. You call the camera application intent to pull the extra, which is the output URI, to the media store. So the following is a line, a new line with a trying attempt, which is going to add some flag. You could add or not. Now you start the activity for results based on the application intent and the camera pick request integer, which we set right there at the top. That's for the flow if it's greater than 21. But if it's not, you can see how short it could be. So a lot of modification has been done. So if you're trying to use this for latest Android devices, it's not going to work. It's going to crash. So this is basically for KitKat lower versions. So just that is so simple. You call the action image capture. You get the output media file URI. You also have a method to do that for us, which is here. It takes an integer of type, just returns the URI from file to which is the get output media file. Over here, you also convert to file, where you get to use the media storage. Use the shader to call you call the directory pictures, and you create the storage directory if it does not exist as well. Just a flow of what you did, but in a different scenario. And you create the media file name from that, so you could have a file name called media file over here. You see that, where you get to concatenate the path, the separator, just to make it unique with the MIME type.jpg, just like the same thing we did for the higher versions of Android. After that, you have a usable intent, so you could call a start activity for intent as well. Let's get to look at what that is doing. Do we need it? No, we don't need it. Let's take this off. So you're going to start an activity for results. If the result is okay, and if the request is take photo, and if the request code is request pick photo, any of it, you know we are actually right on course. When you're trying to pick photo, that is when you're selecting from gallery. What you're going to do, you get the image from the data. That's the selected image. This is just straightforward when you're selecting from gallery. But when you're taking from camera, that's when you need to save, get the MIME type, save to content provider, save to temporary storage, so that it will be readable, things like that. Now you just need to call the get content resolver. Since this is already saved in the storage, you're just selecting from the storage. Just query the content resolver, the selected image, and the file path column. From there you get the value, which is actually going to be a string media path. You could say that, and in turn you need to save, or let's say visualize this media path, where you get to save the image in the image view for previewing the media. So you call the image view, you set image bitmap, you need to call the bitmap factory to decode the file, which is the immediate path, and that's going to actually set that to the profile image view. You close the cursor at that point in time. We also need this media path, that's so that we're going to have the same name with the other guy here. So just set that to post path. At that point in time, post path has a valid string. If it's not, if you're trying to select or use the camera, we also need to check the different build types. If the build version SDK is integer is greater than 21, you need to use glide, display this, call the image file location into the profile image view, and have that set up. But if it's not, you need to use the file URI. You could see just different flow, and you get that done. So we also have a valid post path for in both cases, if it's greater than 21 or if it's less than 21 or 21. That's cool. Let's get to look at how we're going to push this down to the server. We need to verify data when you click on submit button. You need to verify if the edit text is filled for name, username, and password, and if it's not, it's going to return. But we also need to test the path, that's the post path, if it's equals to empty or if the post path is null, any one of it. So you have to get that really across to you. So at that point in time, you need to be sure if the post path is empty or if the post path is null. So if it's null, it's going to tell you please select a profile picture. So if all measures are met, you could move further to extract the username, the name, and the password, save that to a variable, and trigger the submit user details method. Another method right there, which is going to take that 3 parameters, and what it's going to do is going to show the dialog. We're going to be looking at some things here. You call the user service, where you get to have the service class, the application, and the base URL. You have that set up. Now you're going to create the path for the file, either photo or video, any of it. You have the file path called sender, which is short, it should be sender. Now you create a map of the data to pass along. You create a map of the name, the username, and password. So you have that set up. You call a method called create path from string. This method is going to actually get that done for you. Over here, what's this method doing? It takes a string parameter called description string and will return the request body to create the OK HTTP3 multi-part body form. So it's going to mimic a form-like flow for you, which we'll all have, as we've seen when we're trying to use the advanced REST client to interact with the API. It's going to create a form-like for you, which is for the name, username, and password, and you're going to pass those values to it. So you have it set up here. Now you have the hash map. Instantiate the hash map that listens to key value. Now it's the key is the string, while the value is the body, the request body. Now it's going to put the name, the authenticated name, which is the body, username, authenticated username. The same thing goes for the authenticated password. So that's cool. Now you need to call this service. You call the login service. You create the user. You have the map, which is the hash map, and the body, which is the file. Now let's get to look at the multi-part body. You could see where you get that from the body. Prepare file path from the sender, which is the body of the image. There's a method called that prepare file path. You see it there. It takes the string, and what is this method gonna do? It takes a file, instantiate a file. Now this is where you get to pass a post path, the string post path. Don't forget the post path you get when you're doing all your call over here. The post path. What's the post path over here? You could see the post path You see the post part. You see the post part, and you've tested the post part as well. If it's null or empty or over here, so if it's not meeting those parameters, it's going to toast this, select a profile picture. So the post part must not be empty and must not be null. So we've made a lot of checks, so it's not even going to get to this point if those checks are not met. Now it's going to create a request body instance from file. Create this, the media type. Which media type? Is it parsing MP3? Is it parsing image? Is it parsing PDF? So it depends on anyone, but this is a generic media type, / generic. But we've also made some checks so that we'll be so sure that we're selecting image when we're trying to streamline our camera intent, streamline our pic to an image. So you have all that, and it returns the multi-part body, which is used to send also the actual file name. You could send the actual file name from here. The file get name with the request file itself, with the path name, which is the sender. So you have all that running behind the scene. So it's actually going to send a valid body over there. So you have it right there over there. You enqueue and you instantiate the callback message, where you in turn override the response and on failure. You're familiar with that flow. So if the response is successful and the response body is not equals to null, you hide the dialog and you extract the message from that. At that point in time, you could set empty input edit text. You could set the password to be empty. You could set the name to be empty. You could set the username to be empty, so that you could just have a fresh like form to trigger. So you could do some other things from here. From here, you could even launch the login interface, so that the user could use the login to access the application. Could do some other things from here. So that's just the basic flow of how to get this done. On failure, you could actually handle a toast too, if there's a failure in the call to the API. So that's the basic flow about doing this. It's quite lengthy and it's quite detailed. I will implore you to lay your hands on it. It's very rich, so it could be very useful for you when you're trying to set up an application login with a user profile, which is quite robust, and you're saving all this to the Mysql database in cloud. You're not saving it in the SQLite database, or you're saving it locally. I'm actually using a full cloud service. So I'll be ending it here, and I'll be saying thank you very, very much. Don't also forget to include some stuff in the manifest. You need to include the camera, you need to include right external, right internal, and you need to include permissions for the internet, because you're actually using cloud APIs. The API is sitting somewhere in the cloud, and you need to push some values, push some files right there to the storage directory. Thank you very, very much for hanging out with me. Don't go anywhere. We'll be talking about how to fetch all those saved content. Like, let's fetch the user profile, let's get to edit the user profile, and also get that saved with the picture, not just mere text, with the picture of the user. Bye bye.